Hello, I'm David Craddock, and today I want to share with you from the Gospel according to John, the very beautiful words of Jesus that we read in John 15. Before I actually share with you my thoughts on this passage, I want to read the passage to you so you can see how beautifully it's written and the power of the illustration. So, reading from verse 1, these are the words of Jesus, remember. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch of mine that bears no fruit he takes away. And every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes that it might bear more fruit. You are already made clean by the word which I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me you can do nothing. If a man does not abide in me, he is cast forth as a branch and withers, and the branches are gathered, thrown into the fire and burned. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask whatever you will, and it shall be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full. So let's have a look at what this passage is actually saying to us. And let's very unusually start with the last verse first. Jesus says, these things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full. So Jesus is actually sharing these words for a reason. And that reason is that we can take those words to heart, we can meditate upon those words, we can allow them as seeds to germinate within the soil of our hearts, that they might give us joy. These things I have spoken to you, says Jesus, that my joy may be in you, inside your heart, and that your joy may be full. Very, very beautiful words of Jesus. So let's have a look at the illustration that he uses. It's very interesting that he chooses the illustration of a tree to actually illustrate that which lies right at the very core of his message, that he came to give us life and truth and peace and joy. Why? Because right at the very start of the Bible, well, it starts with a tree, doesn't it? The tree of life in the Old Testament, the tree of life which we find in the Garden of Eden. Well, this is the tree of life which we find in the New Testament scripture, in the words of Jesus. I am the true vine. I am the true tree, if you like. And my Father is the vine dresser, the tree dresser. So notice we go to verse 1, that Jesus sees himself as indistinguishable from the Father. He sees himself in complete unity with the Father. He is clothed by the Father. The Father is the vine dresser, the tree dresser, if you like. And so let's have a look at the three component parts of this passage. And the first is the vine, the stock of the vine tree. Now, remember that the vine tree is Jesus. Okay? He is the source. He is the source of life. He is the gift of life. He is the source of love. He is the gift of love. He is the source of peace. He is the gift of peace. Culminating in verse 11, where he is the gift of joy, the source of that joy, which takes root in our hearts. So let's just examine a little bit more about this vine tree. So Jesus is the source. That's what we've established so far. If there is to be any fruit at all, if indeed there are to be any branches emanating from this tree, then first and foremost there must be a vine which is sturdy and strong, which is trustworthy and true, and that vine is Jesus. He is the one upon which we can depend. He is the one in whom we can put our trust. Now, trees don't just appear, do they, out of magic? Trees are actually structures, natural structures, coming out of God's creation, which start with a seed. And that's exactly what God has done in Jesus. He has planted Jesus as a seed on this earth. A seed, if you like, initially in the form of a baby in Bethlehem's manger. Yes? And so Jesus comes to us, planted by God in this world, in order to bring these wonderful truths to us that they can take root in our heart. And we thank God for Jesus, yes? We thank God for Jesus. We thank God that he has planted that seed, that we might have him, that as Christians we can actually revolve the whole of our lives around his teachings and his Spirit and all the truths that he shares with us. So Jesus is the vine tree. He is the source. So let's then come on to just examine a little bit about what I think are the key words within this scripture. And it's in relation to that vine stock, which is Jesus. In verse 4 it says this, "Abide in me and I in you." Now when Jesus actually uses these words, he's talking about a very real understanding of what happens to the vine stock in Palestine. Yes, the area where he lived and where he actually undertook his ministry. Because what happens during the colder season is that the vine tree is cut down, the branches are pruned, and so what happens during that season is that the vine tree locks around the branches, and the branches almost grow into the vine tree. And so the illustration is that Jesus wants to be one with us, just as the vine tree and the branches are one with each other. "Abide in me," says Jesus, "and I in you." You know, throughout the scriptures, we're taught to meditate upon the words of God. And what a beautiful word that is to meditate on, the word abide. Yes? Those of you who are acquainted with music, with the Messiah by Handel, "But who may abide the day of his coming?" So, abide in me and I in you. A very beautiful scripture, a very beautiful verse upon which we might meditate and ask God for it to take root in our hearts. Let's then have a look a little bit at the next part of the illustration, the branches. We've looked at the vine. Yes, we understand that the vine is Jesus. Well, what are the branches? Well, the branches are those who believe in Jesus. The branches come out of the vine. Yes? The branches are one with the vine. Elsewhere in the scriptures, particularly in Paul's writings, Paul teaches us that we might be one with Jesus. Yes? That we might be in him and he in us. Is that not an extension of this illustration? That the vine and the branches are one as they grow together. So we are the ones who put our dependence upon him. Now that doesn't mean that we just say, "Okay, Jesus, it's all up to you, we're going to walk away." It definitely doesn't mean that. What it means is that we specifically, through our prayer and our devotion and the study of the scriptures and our study of Jesus through the scriptures, ask him to lead us and to guide us. Yes? To be in our every thought, our every word, and our every deed. So the branches emanate from the vine tree. Yes? Isn't that beautiful? Now look, note. I think this is a very, very important point. Note the personalness of the way in which Jesus writes. So when we actually read this passage, we see lots of I's and me's and you's. Yes? In verse 9, Jesus says, "As the Father," that's God, "as the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love." This is very, very personal. This is not at all abstract. This is Jesus speaking to his disciples, and because as Christians we believe that Jesus speaks to us today through these scriptures, speaking to us also. Yes? "As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love." Yes? Spirituality is in many ways more personal than personality, because it lies right in the innermost heart of our personality. It speaks to us through Jesus living inside of us as people who have put our trust in him. So we've looked a little bit at what the vine means. We've looked a little bit at what the branches are. Let's have a look at the fruit. Well, the fruit appears on the branches. Okay? But the fruit doesn't appear on the branches if they're just standalone branches. If they were standalone branches, well, they wouldn't have any life at all. They'd be just lying there in a heap, wouldn't they? Ready to be thrown away. No, the branches are connected to the vine, and it's because the branches are connected to the vine that the branches are then able to produce fruit. Do you see that? It's all cause and effect. Yes? The cause is God working with Jesus to produce this very solid vine tree, which in turn produces the branches, which in turn produces the fruit. The branches could not appear at all without the vine. They'd be dead. Okay? And the fruit, of course, is produced because the branches are connected to the vine. It's a very, very powerful message indeed. So what is this fruit? What is this fruit? Well, in this passage, John 15, we read about love. Yes? We read about love. "As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. abide in my love, and be people of love. Be people of kindness and patience when you're dealing with other people during your everyday lives. In verse 11, again, we read about the joy. These things I have spoken in you, that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be full. But what about a fully comprehensive understanding about what this fruit is? Where do we go for that? Well, we find that in Paul's writings. And we find it in the letter which Paul wrote to the church at Galatia, which we refer to as the letter to the Galatians. And we find it in chapter 5 and verse 22, where it says this: the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. That is the fruit of the Spirit. And that is the fruit which is produced when the branches are connected to the vine tree. So remember this passage. It's a beautiful passage, and it echoes a lot of the wider message of John's Gospel. In John chapter 10, we read again the words of Jesus: I came that you might have life and have it abundantly. Well, this passage, John 15, is all about that life, isn't it? It's how about that life starts because of Jesus' connection with the Father, producing that source of life, which is then experienced in the branches, which is who we are as followers of Him, which then shows forth in the fruit of the Spirit. This passage, of course, is a passage which is recorded as Jesus moves forward to Gethsemane. And in Gethsemane, where Jesus prays so beautifully with the Father, it's all recorded in John 17, 2 chapters further on. We read again about that beautiful personalness which he has with the Father, and how he regards his disciples, and how he regards us today as modern day disciples. In John 17, verse 10, it says, all mine are thine, and thine are mine, and I am glorified in them. So he loves us, just as he loved his disciples all those years ago in Palestine. So he loves us today and wants us to be his branches, experiencing the fullness of life during this earthly life and into eternity, and displaying that fruit of the Spirit, which is not fake or artificial or fabricated in any way whatsoever, but which is real, the fruit of the Spirit. Yes? Thank you for listening to this message today. I really hope you found it helpful, and I hope you'll visit me again sometime. That's David Craddock. Thank you for listening. Thank you.